Hello and welcome to The Point. I'm Marcel Wieder. Today on The Point, commercializing innovations is what the MaRS Discovery District was set up for nearly 15 years ago. Much like Silicon Valley in California, Silicon Alley in New York, and Kendall Square in Boston, MaRS helps innovative companies find funding and mentor them through their startup. Dr. Zayna Khayat from the MaRS Health joins us to discuss more. And melanoma is one of the fastest growing forms of cancer. Over 5,000 cases are diagnosed annually in Canada. Annette Sear, chair of the Melanoma Network of Canada, is here to discuss how people can protect themselves and what issues they're working on. All that and more on this edition of The Point. The MaRS Discovery District is one of the leading centers for the commercialization of research in Canada. It's a hive for innovators who are doing cutting-edge research that spans several different sectors. With the provincial government's recent announcement of an investment of $20 million in a Health Technology Innovation Evaluation Fund, these startups are expected to receive a boost. I'm joined by Dr. Zayna Khayat from the MaRS Innovation Center. Pleasure having you, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about the MaRS Center?
Yeah, so we call it MaRS Discovery District, and MaRS was created back in 1999-2000 to be a home and a hub to convert those discoveries into useful products, solutions, technologies to actually solve big problems that society faces, primarily and initially in health, hence MaRS, medical and related sciences, but the related comes in now in the evolution of MaRS. Any idea or invention in a technological area, MaRS is the home to come and convert that into something useful that actually creates economic value for society.
Now, we've seen similar hubs in the U.S. I'm thinking in Boston, in California, in Silicon Valley. They've taken academic research and changed it and applied it into a commercialization.
Yeah, so those hubs we call clusters, and there's a whole literature around economic development being focused around clusters, where you concentrate all those strong assets, but it's regional. It always is. You can't have an entire country have a cluster. Hence, it's a region like Silicon Valley, as you mentioned, in California. There's Silicon Alley in other areas. Minneapolis has coined Life Sciences Alley, so they focus on the biomedical. And of course, Boston and the Cambridge area. We might call that Kendall Square in many ways. And so this is the natural evolution for Canada's hub, primarily in biomedical, but now MaRS has evolved, as I said, to really high tech as a cluster and a hub. And so you mentioned academic research. It always starts there. That's where the discoveries are. That's what the public sector's investment has been into R&D and what we call STEM related sciences. But you need many more ingredients to actually produce, let's say, the next BlackBerry or the next Genentech out of that academic science. You need capital. It's on an uptick if you look at the data, venture capital. And the third thing, though, you need is talent, entrepreneurial, been there, done that, who can take an idea and make a company. And then the fourth is you need all the rest of big industry. You can't just have startups from academia that are capitalized, even with great talent. You need them all. All that is now surrounding the MaRS Discovery District, and we really feel that it's going to pop in the next 5 years on the back of the last 15 years.
Now, you're partnering up with other companies that help mentor those people who have the startups in MaRS. Is that correct?
So we have a few ways to provide advice to these young companies. So you kind of need two things. You need to build founders, teach them how to start and grow and scale a company, and they need to build great companies. There's technology risk, there's financial risk, there's a lot of capital needed. So we can't do that alone with our resources at MaRS. So we bring in external volunteer as well as paid advisors, or we access senior companies, been there, done that entrepreneurs, and wrap all this advice around them. And a portion of those startups we also incubate physically in the MaRS complex, although the majority of the model, and we work with about 1,000 startups.
That many?
About 1,000, yeah. 300 in health, about 200 in clean tech, and the rest are in tech industries. About 100 are physically close to us at MaRS. The rest are served in a virtual model.
So give us an indication or an idea of some of the types of projects that MaRS is helping to incubate.
Yeah, so I mentioned we work with about 1,000 young startups, and that's across tech and clean tech and health. I'll give you one example. You might know somebody who's been through an experience called the Pap smear. It's the way we screen for cervical cancer, particularly when women are first sexually active. That's the time you're supposed to go for your first Pap smear. For very obvious reasons, the average normal woman who's even perhaps highly health literate and educationally literate avoids that experience. It is not the nicest experience. When it goes unscreened, if you develop cervical cancer, it is highly terminal. The prognosis is not good. If you catch it early, you don't get cervical cancer. Eve Medical is one of the companies we support that developed a home self-swab that replaces the Pap smear. So think of the pregnancy test. Who could imagine if you had to go somewhere to get a pregnancy test? You just go to Shoppers and you buy it. That would be the model here. It completely opens accessibility to wide-based population screening, particularly for those populations who are not going to access the traditional go to a hospital and meet an obstetrician. So that's one of our really exciting young health companies. And that was a student from OCAD University who used a design approach to take on an experience that is not comfortable for average society. So they've been doing quite well and getting interest all over the world, in Europe and in China, and including in Canada.
So tell me about the EXCITE program that you head up.
Yeah, so EXCITE is an acronym. It stands for Excellence in Clinical Innovation and Technology Evaluation. What that means is this: medicine is evidence-based. We don't just read something that some celebrity endorsed and then adopt that into our medical system. That's not how it rolls. There needs to be quite a high grade of evidence of what technologies do and don't work. That is very difficult to produce. It's a clinical trial. It costs millions of dollars. If you're a young Ontario startup who all your focus is building a great company or a great technology, you've never done this before. And so EXCITE is a program that sits between the young innovator who needs to build some very, very credible, high-grade evidence of does this actually work when I give it to a patient, that's academically defensible, and with the Ontario Health System, who we work with to pick what technologies they want to go into the EXCITE program because they're relevant to Ontario patients. And we broker a process between the company, academia, of which we have incredible academic infrastructure to evaluate medicine, and the Ontario Health System. It's the world first, and what we call it a pull model for health innovation. When you see all the jokes and the criticisms of things like pharma sales reps, the reason medical companies have reps that sell is because we don't have an automatic window to get technologies into the system after they're proven to be valuable. So they've flooded the street with reps who are selling, and that's a push model of innovation. EXCITE says, the Ontario Health System declared this is a major gap. This company has a solution. It's a pull model for health innovation. The world has taken notice of this very interesting way to collaborate between academia, industry, and the government. We are now replicating the EXCITE model in the US, in the UK, and in other countries.
Really?
It's a made in Ontario, I guess, an innovation, the process.
How critical is it that there's good government support behind these efforts?
Government's role in producing the next generation economy, which for Ontario, for Canada, will be the knowledge economy, which is actually the innovation economy as we transition from an industrial economy. It's an absolute vital role, and government federally and provincially and municipally was at the table in the inception of MaRS more than 15 years ago and continue to invest in this critical, what we call the valley of death, right? Converting from cool discovery into value, in my case for patients, for our health system, but there's always a third value proposition, which is the economy. These are going to be the next generation jobs that my kids are going to be hired into, and your kids and your family, as we move away from what have been the traditional source of jobs in the industrial economy.
Well, Dr. Zayna Khayat from the MaRS Discovery District, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back in a moment.